Okay, we're starting Unit 3, which we deal with parallel and perpendicular lines. So it's important that we take a minute to review the three different types of lines, the relationships those lines can have. So if those lines are coplanar, they can be parallel, or they can be intersecting. They can also be perpendicular. When those lines are non-coplanar, then we have skew lines. Okay, this part of the note sheet from here on out should correspond with the Word document that you need to print out off the website to go along with this lesson, so that when we come in the next day, we can do a little bit of practice and we can move on. So our parallel postulate tells us that if there is a line and a point that's not on that line, so I have my line and I have a point that is not on it, there is exactly one, meaning one and only one line, that can go through that point and still be parallel to this line. So there it is. And our notation for parallel lines are arrows. If I were to say this is A and this is B, I say A is parallel to B, which we should be familiar with. We also have a perpendicular postulate, which says something that's very similar. If I have a line and a point that's not on my line, there is one and only one line that I can draw that's going to be perpendicular to the given line. Okay, and again, we use our perpendicular symbol. Our theorem that we're going to start with this for this unit has to do with lines being perpendicular to a transversal, and we will discuss what a transversal is in a minute. So in a plane, if two lines are perpendicular to the same line, so we're given A is perpendicular to C and B is perpendicular to C, we can reach the conclusion that A and B are parallel to one another. Okay? Conversely, if I have two lines that are parallel, and I know that the one line, there's a line that's perpendicular to one of those lines, I can conclude the other line must also be perpendicular to that line. Okay, as we move along here, we can talk about a transversal. And a transversal is a line that intersects at least two lines at different points. And it's important that you notice at least and at different points. And we'll look at a couple of examples of that. So let's take a moment and look here. In number 1, I need to identify the transversal. So it's the line that intersects at least two other lines. So that would be line C. Intersection is here and here. In number 2, F is a transversal because of two intersections. I is a transversal because of two different intersections. S is a transversal and intersects at 2 points, and H is a transversal and intersects at 2 different points. When I look at number 3, E is a transversal because it intersects O and G. O is a transversal because it intersects E and G, and again, G is a transversal. However, looking at number 4, line S does intersect lines N and U, but it's at one distinct point. So, no transversals. Okay, let's go back to the note sheet. So, our transversal is line O, again, lowercase letters. It's intersecting lines G and E. And when we talk about the interior angles, we want to be looking at the angles that are between the two intersecting lines. So my interior angles become 3, 4, 5, and 6. while my exterior angles are those that are on the outside. 7 and 8 and 1 and 2. Okay, moving along, we need to talk about what it means to be corresponding. Okay, two angles are corresponding if they are in corresponding positions. For example, 2 and 6. If I were to slide this grouping down onto my other set, 2 and 6 are in the same position. 2 is in the top right, 6 is in the top right. Your other corresponding angles are going to be 4, 8, 7, 3, 1, 5. Okay, those marks are not indicating congruence. They're simply marking the angles for you to be able to see. Okay, we have alternating interior angles. So they're alternating because they're on opposite sides of the transversal. So if I look at the transversal O, I'm going to have one angle to the right and one angle to the left. And since they are interior, I know that I'm looking within this region. So examples would be 4 and 5, and your other example would be 3 and 6. The same is true for alternating exteriors. Again, we're looking at the transversal and we're looking to the right and to the left, but this time I need to focus on the angles that are on the outside. So that's going to give me 7 and 2 as well as 1 and 8. Our next pair of angles, they're considered consecutive interior, or in other words, same side interior. So when we go back to our transversal, we are looking at two angles that are both to the right, or perhaps both to the left. And again, if we're using the word interior, we need to focus on these, the ones that are between the two lines that are being intersected by the transversal. So we have 3 and 5 as a pair and 4 and 6 as a pair. Now we have consecutive exterior, same concept. The angles need to be both to the same side of the transversal. This time they're going to be our outside. So 2 and 8 and 1 and 7. So I need you to go through and pause the recording for each of these and determine who are interior, exterior, same side interior, alternate interior corresponding angles. And I need you to write those down to show me for homework in addition to the notes. You need to pause here and again identify corresponding, alternating interior, alternating exterior, consecutive interior. And lastly, I need you to look at the diagram, name a pair of parallel lines, name a pair of perpendicular lines, determine if you think line PN is parallel to KM and explain why, and decide if you think line PR is perpendicular to line NP, and again, explain and justify your work. Pause one more time, and this is the last slide. This is your fourth check. And I need you to classify the angles that I am giving you. And you may abbreviate. For example, alternating interior could be AI. One thing that you may want to do is when you're given a pair of angles, it may be beneficial to find where those angles are. So for example, 5 and 1. Identify the transversal and then the two other lines that help make up the angle. Okay? All right, I look forward to talking to you tomorrow about this and being able to move along to the next section.